Good afternoon, YouTube. Welcome back once again to Fat Cat Collections. Today I got another watch review for you guys, and it's by the brand Cadola. Now, Cadola is another Dartmouth brand, and if you're not familiar with Dartmouth, they own companies like Nubeo, Spinnaker, who else they got? Duxo, many different models and brands in their lineup, and they make exceptional quality watches. So this is kind of one of their flagship watches under the Cadola name. I encourage you to check the website out. I'll put a link in the description where you can pick up this watch, and of course take you directly to the website where you can check out some of their other models. We're going to come back to the box, but let's first show you guys the watch, which has already been sized for my 7-inch wrist. This is another one of your sort of Submariner homage style watches, but I say that very loosely on this model because it kind of goes in its own direction. We have a Valjoux 7750 movement, a time-tested, very well reliable, respected movement. Beautiful 316 stainless steel case. Very similar bracelet to what you might find on like a Submariner. We have a milled clasp with a signed clasp on the back with just the standard Cadola branding. Very simple logo. It's just basically Cadola in script or in cursive. On these watches, there are several different colors. On these particular watches, it appears that each one has sort of a matte finished bezel. So hopefully you can see this by this video here, and you can tell by the lighting, it's almost like more of a, it's still black, but it kind of pushes a little bit towards charcoal, and it's just kind of a matte finish around the bezel. Unidirectional rotating bezel, you know, nice and solid. I never really put too much emphasis on, you know, the bezel when I'm reviewing these watches by really any brand, because for the most part, you know, decent quality watches like this, you know, reputable companies, they do their best to make a good product. And really, I don't really think that, you know, I don't want to speak for every single brand out there, but generally, you find bezel problems mainly on watches in the $15 to $35 price range. Anything else, not to say you can't, don't, you know, don't take what I'm saying, you know, as the word, right? You just have to take every brand as they come and inspect each brand. It's always good when you gotta buy something, buy it from somewhere that has the ability to return it if you don't like it. But again, on these, you know, on most of the watches I review, the bezel is nice and tight, rock solid, no back play. I mean, these are kind of things I mention only because some folks who watch these reviews, and not just my reviews, but many reviews, are concerned sometimes when buying a watch what kind of quality that you get. And I believe the reason for that is because there's been so much fake news from the watch snobs out there about like this fake like fear tactic that these inexpensive watches, you're really sacrificing quality when you don't go with like a Rolex or one of these super high-end, high-priced watches. They've created this world where folks who don't know any better, folks who, we hear it on both sides, folks like, you know, from the opposite side who want to defend their stance will say, oh, well, we don't know any better because we like affordable watches. Oh, you've only checked out Invicta, you've only checked out Nubeo, so you don't know what real quality is. It's complete nonsense. I've checked out so many watches over the years. I've handled so many watches. I own over 200 watches, and I can tell you across all brands that they're all really nice. Once you hit that level of good quality, the differences as you start to creep up the price range are very, very subtle. For instance, a watch like this, if you buy it directly on the Cadola website, you're looking at about $3,050 on this. Now, I do recommend, you know, whenever anybody buys something, you buy it from where you're going to get the best deal. And of course, right now, I believe this watch is on Amazon for $1,800, which is, you know, definitely more in line to what it should cost. Whenever you get a Valjoux 7750 in a watch, you start to pay a little bit of a premium for those watches. For the most part, a good rule of thumb, if you're getting a Valjoux 7750, you know, generally the watches are going to be in the $1,000 plus range. And really, the only advantage to having a Valjoux 7750 is, one, you have the name, right? And I think a lot of times, watch collectors and folks who get involved in collecting watches, they worry too much about the name. Now, I'm not saying that on paper there isn't reasons why this is a spectacular movement, but I can tell you at the end of the day, they all work, right? They all tell time. And this is an automatic chronograph. So unless you're going to be using a watch as a stopwatch, there's really no point having a chronograph, unless, of course, you like the way it looks with all the different subdials and stuff. So as far as the quality of the watch, what I really like about this particular watch is it just has a really nice wrist presence. It's nice and tall, and it has that nice unidirectional gear-edged bezel. So it just definitely kind of takes on its own look when you compare it to other watches that are kind of comparable, like your Pagani designs, you know, the Pro Diver. You know, I think that it's a little bit of a stretch to say this is a homage to a Rolex because, you know, the Rolex, or a homage to a Submariner, because the Submariner doesn't have, you know, a chronograph to the best of my knowledge. It's a standard movement. I think you have to get into different models of Rolex in order to get a chronograph. But you know, this is a gorgeous execution. Screw down crown, screw down function pushers. Again, beautiful bezel, nice 316 style solid stainless steel construction. We have the case back, which is of course threaded. You know, a lot of the specs on most watches out there are all very similar. You know, again, once you hit that level of good quality, you tend to find a lot of similarities in what you're getting, you know, and one of those similarities, or checkboxes I like to call, is the construction. What's it made out of? 316 stainless steel, bam. That's like a huge one for any watch that you're going to purchase. Now, of course, folks who are looking to get something in precious metals, you know, gold, platinum, of course you're not going to go with, you know, well, you probably have to go into the luxury territory because a lot of those more affordable brands like Cadola, like Invicta, like Aragon, they don't make solid gold or precious metal watches. Now, I don't know if that'll ever change, but I hope not, because you buy these affordable watches because they're more affordable, right? All right, so as far as, what else do we get with this? So as far as, yeah, I mentioned already, you have the milled clasp. That's, you know, not really an indication of quality, but it's a little bit nicer looking. It has more of a refined look than a stamped clasp. Although I, you know, don't really have a preference. You know, I think they're both nice. But when you take the watch off and you're leaving it on your nightstand or whatever, it does have a much nicer look as opposed to a stamped clasp. But they both function the same way. We do have a dual push button deploying clasp and a safety lock. I like that they do that on this watch. Be honest with you, most companies do a dual push button deploying clasp. Invicta seems to be one of the few that don't. They tend to just use their friction clasp. It's probably cheaper, you know, and a lot of the Invictas are a lot cheaper than this watch. But you know, again, you have to decide what makes you happy ultimately. But this is a fantastic execution of what I would kind of consider sort of a Submariner style. And again, that phrase kind of gets tossed around a lot too, because Rolex is such a well-known, popular brand, especially the Submariner, that anytime a watch starts to even like look like it a little bit, it's like, oh, it's a homage. And it's really not, because it's not really all that special. There's not really a lot in the design of a Rolex. It's a simple design, and there were watches before Rolex, and there will be watches after Rolex. Of course, I'm sure Rolex will still be around, but it's not really over-the-top unique. Now, as far as color combinations, I do have this watch already, and they call this one, well, they call this one the Arctic White, or you could also call this sort of like a Panda. The Prussian Gray is a beautiful execution as well. It's got sort of like a matte gray finish and then a slightly lighter finish bezel. This one, of course, has that black with almost like a silvery, kind of shimmery, in between silver and pearl white face. So some might say it's sort of pearl white, but I don't think it's that as pearlescent. You know what I mean? It's definitely not mother of pearl. We do have the black version, which is just black on black with some red kind of markers on the inside there. The indices still have lume on them. And of course, we have the green face with the same type color bezel as this one here. So all three models, with the exception of the Prussian Gray, have that black bezel. They're all beautiful. Right now, as far as I can tell on the Cadola website, two colors are sold out. This one, and of course the black. You can get the green and black with the gold accents, and of course the Prussian Gray, which surprisingly to me is my favorite one, and it's still available. But I will put the link to these on Amazon as well. I'd rather see you guys get it on Amazon if you're gonna pick one up and save, you know, quite a bit of money there, you know. So, but it's a fantastic watch, and I find myself wearing this one quite often. And I got a big selection of watches to choose from. I don't know, it just has a really great wrist presence, and I enjoy it. They are limited edition to 200 pieces, which probably explains why they sold out. The Value 7750 is a Swiss-made movement, but remember, kind of take that with a grain of salt. This watch does say Swiss movement on it. Some watches, you know, over the years will say Swiss made. Remember that the whole Swiss made thing is really kind of a joke, in my opinion. You know, you don't have to get a watch that says Swiss made. And I say Swiss made because most watches in the $1,000, $2,000 price range are not made in Switzerland. They're being made in China or Asia somewhere, and they are basically falling underneath the designation for Swiss made, whether the movement's made there, you know, and you and I don't know how much of the watch is actually made in Switzerland, and if they can get away with the bare minimum to say Swiss made, they will. Now, at least with this company, they don't go out on a limb and do that. They just put Swiss movement. So the watch is most likely made in Asia somewhere, and of course, they're keeping it real by saying, hey, the movement is Swiss made, and I think everybody can attest, whether you like the watches I like or not, that a Valjoux is a spectacular movement. But again, realistically, they all tell time, and realistically, you're not going to get a Valjoux 7750 and then have, you know, your Rolex be like, oh man, I prefer the Valjoux, or you're not going to have a Seiko NH35 and say, oh man, I really prefer the Valjoux over that. They all tell time. One might be a little bit more accurate, but remember, you can regulate. If you want to pay money to have a Seiko NH35 regulated, or even a Valjoux, you can do so and have it as accurate as a COSC certified Rolex or a quartz watch, right? So pretty straightforward. As far as the other specifications on this, I'm just going to give you guys the basics. Again, we have that Swiss automatic Valjoux 7750, 316 stainless steel case and construction. As far as the fit and finish, and I actually was corrected the other day, and I'm really glad somebody did. Because over the years, I've always been like, this is kind of common sense, but I for some reason, my brain didn't equate. When I hear people say, oh, the fit and finish, I'm always like, the fit? Like, I'm always like, what? That's so subjective. Like, how could you rate fit? But that's not what they mean. It's basically the fit of how the parts go together. And I guess I never really looked at it that way or thought they meant that, because I've never had a watch where no matter what the price is in my collection, I never look at a watch and say, oh man, they really, you know, this is really fit together poorly. You know, there are some watches that, like, based on the design, like for instance, like a Jubilee style bracelet, whether it's on, you know, an Invicta or whether it's on a Techno Marine or whatever, all the ones that are affordable that I have, you know, they're nice, but they tend to be, as Urban Gentry said, jingly jangly. You know, they kind of shake and wobble, and the metal's a lot thinner on those links, you know, and I don't know what it's like on a Rolex. I've never, you know, picked one up. And that might be something, you know, if I ever get my hands on a Jubilee from Rolex, I'd really like to see what that feels like, if there is a difference. And there very well may be a noticeable difference. I don't think so, but you never know. But, you know, when you look at a bracelet like that, of course, it kind of flexes more, you know, just basically because of the construction of the links. But something like this, when you look at, you know, maybe fit and finishing meant something back in the 80s where watches and manufacturing wasn't as good, but nowadays fit and finish is almost just like a universal. Unless you're buying a watch in the $15 to $30 range, the fit and finishing is going to be amazing. And when folks say, oh, well, the finishing is better on this, you know, I mean, a company finishes a watch how they want to. If it's brushed, it's going to be brushed. I don't think one can look at a brush finish on one watch versus a super expensive one and say, oh, this one's just much better. It's a brushed finish. There's not really much difference between the two, you know. There might be a difference as far as how fine the brushing is, but that's not necessarily an indicator of quality, right? So just kind of keep that in mind when you're looking at these different affordable watches. Case thickness, 17 millimeter, and that's what I like most about it. It's a nice, thick, chunky watch. And over the years, as my tastes have kind of not really changed, but just kind of, you know, opened up a little bit more. Before it used to be like, oh, I only want the big watches, you know, and I still love the big watches. I got another Invicta on my radar, but I really appreciate the smaller ones as well. And this isn't really small at a 43 millimeter case size. It's really not. It's a nice size watch. It's not, you know, for me personally, when you get into 38 millimeter, it's a little small for my taste, but, you know, I mean, if I saw one I really liked, I'd still wear one, you know. I mean, I got this female's watch right here. This is by, who's this by? This is by Earnshaw. And, you know, it's probably a 38 millimeter watch, but I'm probably not going to wear this. It just gets a little too small for my liking. But again, it's still, you know, always wear what makes you happy. But I do think 43 is really a nice, well-rounded number there for folks who are like, yeah, I just want a little bit bigger watch without going into the oversized territory. But again, I do find myself wearing this one quite a bit. I like it a lot. Bandwidth 22 millimeters, so if you ever need to, you know, if you want to put it on something else, change it up. I tend to not do that. I tend to wear the watch the way it comes, but if you want to, 22 is a very universal lug size. You find a whole slew of different, you know, straps and bands and from all different companies all over the internet. 200 meters of water resistance, and you get a two-year international warranty. So very cool. The only thing I would say about this watch, and I'm not sensitive by any means, but some folks, I tell you, I see all kinds of stuff from people talking about the crown digs in me. You know, I mean, that's fine. If you're sensitive, that's fine. For me, I never worry about that. But some folks might, the think that the back on this, because of the type of engraving done in the case back and the depth of the engraving, which I absolutely love because you can really see it well, you can feel it, you can read it well, it does kind of act a little bit on your wrist like a little bit kind of an abrasive sandpaper. Again, I'm kind of exaggerating a little bit, but it is a rougher back when compared to a lot of other watches in my collection. So that might bother other people, it might not. So for me, it doesn't bother me at all, but I did want to mention it in case you are one of those very, very sensitive folks out there. Let me put the watch down. We're going to throw it on the wrist here in a second, but case on the Cadola watches, at least and the model on this, and I'm sorry guys, I forgot to tell you, the model on this is the, I think I'm saying this right, Aegir. It's A-E-G-I-R. Aegir or Aegir. I'm not sure exactly how you say it. I wish companies would start to, not just Dartmouth, but I wish brands would start to put the pronunciation, you know, what do you call it? I'm not really sure what you actually refer to it, but a lot of times you have the pronunciation spelling on how these things are supposed to sound. That would be kind of nice to do that, just so we, you know, us YouTubers, I kind of feel dumb and kind of, you know, when I'm doing a watch review and I don't even like know how to say the brand name. Nubeo gets it too, and that's Nubeo. I was like, when I first started working with them, I said, how do you say it? They're like, no, it's Nubeo, because I was calling it Nubio. A lot of other guys are calling it Nubio. It's actually Nubeo. This is Cadola, but this company sends me so many watches. A lot of times I don't really have the opportunity to, and I don't want to bother my contact because she's slammed with this company, you know, on how to say all these things. So we do the best we can. Ultimately, you know, you like the watch or you don't. So, but the case on these has been awesome presentation. Got that green outer sleeve comes off, nice thick, heavy cardboard construction. We open it up and you get this super high gloss, very similar to the Duxo watches, but it's done in the high gloss green, right? Where are they? I got one right here. The Duxos actually that bright red. So pretty cool case. It looks really nice. Definitely a nice presentation if you are gifting this. We open it up here and we have, of course, the number of the watch. Number, what do I got? 63 out of 200. Limited edition. You know, the normal stuff you get with a watch. You know, some folks really get. I guess I'm kind of desensitized when it comes to getting watches. I have so many. Don't get me wrong. I'm extremely fortunate to be able to do stuff like this. But you know, I'm more excited about the watch nowadays. I think most of us are like that. But I think, you know, if you are new to collecting and you're starting to add, or you don't have a big collection, or whatever your case may be, you know, getting the box and opening up and the presentation are really great. And you might display that on your dresser or your, you know, nightstand. But at least with the Cadolas, you get a pretty nice presentation. The Invicta boxes with the bright yellow, and a lot of the other companies I've seen, even other Dartmouth brands like the Earnshaws, they're just a basic cheap cardboard box. They work. You know, you remember, you don't buy a watch for the box, you buy it for the product, right? And a lot of times with me, you know, I feel there's companies who send out really, you know, extravagant boxes, a beautiful presentation, but I almost feel bad not using the watch boxes sometimes. Perfect examples like Aquadive and Visser watches, beautiful presentation, but you know, you're also paying for that. I'd rather pay less for the watch and just get a box. That's why I like some companies. I think like brands like Patek and Rolex and all those other luxury brands, some of their watches, like they come in almost like a plastic bag and like a really basic, like, so you would think by looking at the presentation, like this is a fake from China or something like that, but it's not. A lot of them come like that. So I kind of like that idea. If you don't need the box, and you know why have the company spend money on that, producing it? Why would you spend money on it? You know, so I think it'd be kind of a nice idea for companies if they give people the option to, you know, not include the box for a minimal discount. And then I don't know what something like this costs to construct, but it's probably pretty substantial, but I have no idea. But anyway, let's go ahead and throw the wrist, or the wrist on the watch on the wrist. Oh, I forgot to mention as well, folks, they don't list, unfortunately, and this is a big one, and this is a big one for a lot of folks. Believe it or not, they don't have the crystal listed on the website. But let me just see if I can make it out in the back. All right, so they do list it on the back of the watch, and this is one of those things that I've said it many times. I'm going to keep harping on it, that they need to really update their websites and have all the information. And one company is really good on that is like Aquasea and Oceaniva. Their websites are really up to date. Granted, they don't have as many much inventory and as many different models as a Dartmouth branding, but they have as much information as possible, and I would really like to see this company do more of that. But if you are on the fence about this and you're like, I need to know that, it does have a sapphire crystal on it, which is a checkbox for many folks. Not for me, but for many folks. So let's throw it on. So I have a 7-inch wrist. I weigh about 182 pounds, and I'm about 5'8". This is what it's going to look like on a guy my size, my height, and my weight. Again, 43 millimeter, perfect size. You know, and I think if you guys have been watching me for a while, I do say that a lot of times whenever I put on a watch, because, you know, 43 is a good size, but so is 50. You know, I will state that 55 and those really large watches, as much as I like them and I still wear them, I wore one of my Sea Hunters the other day. You know, there is a time and a place, and a lot of times I do find myself just wearing the smaller stuff. Fits under my cuff easier, fits under the jacket easier, and I tend to wear the bigger, flashier stuff. You know, if I'm going to go out to the casino or I'm going to go, you know, I want to do something where I want to get that wrist noticed a little more. It just depends on my mood, but it's nice to have the variety. And again, that's the cool thing with all these different watch companies out there making exceptional quality watches. You can have a huge collection on, you know, I'm not going to say on a budget because these all cost money, but, you know, you could definitely have a lot of watches in your collection and always have something to wear no matter what you're doing. So that's it. So again, as always, thank you, Cadola, for your generosity, and they're part of Dartmouth, of course. So I do appreciate this ongoing collaboration. It's been awesome. I see more and more YouTubers lately who review Invictas and stuff like that, guys who came along after me. I see them lately like reviewing some of the watches that I've reviewed in this channel, brands like Dufa and brands like Nubeo, and I can only, you know, they may have discovered that on their own, of course, but I hope that when doing these videos definitely helps to bring some awareness to these great brands, and if I can help you guys in any way, by all means, drop me a comment, drop me an email. I'm always here to help. As always, folks, have a wonderful day, and take care.